Good morning. Thank y'all for having me. I love the energy in this room. Everybody's so excited about what you do. So I'm going to share with you guys what I do because I love my job. I love working with older folks and younger folks as well. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about driving rehab today. So give me a second so I can see what y'all are seeing. So Mary Lou covered kind of my whole background. Sorry, I should have been less than 15 seconds. I realize now, but I'll work on that. I am an occupational therapist and a certified driving rehabilitation specialist. And most people don't know what a driving rehab specialist is. So I'm going to kind of just give you guys a brief summary of what we do. We help individuals either return to driving after a disability or illness or retire from driving. And I'm going to talk to you guys kind of about what that involves, but I'm going to specifically talk about older drivers today. So I started doing this. I worked at a hospital as an OT at Baptist Collierville, and I had folks that wanted to know if they could return to driving after strokes. And I was like, I don't know. What does your doctor say? And I had one gentleman that could see nothing on his left side, not from blindness in one eye, but from his stroke. So he had no peripheral vision. And he would tell me how he would go to Sam's and drive the cart, run it into everything, all running around Sam's. But his doctor told him he could drive. And I said, well, what did your doctor do? He said he had me walk down the hall and read a vision sign. Well, I don't know if you guys know, but I don't have to have peripheral vision to read a vision sign down the hall. So I said to him, well, when you're on the road, you tell me because I don't want to be on the road. And that's really when I decided to go back and become a driving rehab specialist. I investigated that. It's just some continuing education. And then we have to have lots of observation hours with someone else. And then we sit for a certification exam. So that's where the certificate, the C comes from, the CBRS. I've been doing this for about 13 years. And when I started, I was going to open a program at the hospital. And they kind of drug their feet and they said, well, you can have them drive in the parking lot with the golf cart. I thought that's not the same as driving on Poplar or the interstate. So I decided to open my own company, and that's when I jumped in and started driving independence. So let me tell you guys a little bit about my practice. My company is Driving Independence. We're a community-based occupational therapy company that provides comprehensive driving evaluations, final fittings for modified vehicles, and driver training across the states of Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. We help individuals return to driving safely after an injury or illness or make informed decisions about driving retirement. So I'm going to talk mostly about the driving evaluation today, but if someone has specialized equipment placed on their vehicle, such as hand controls or a left foot accelerator, then we do a final fitting with them. I go to the mobility dealer that's put that equipment in and then make sure that that equipment is suitable for them in their car after they've already driven with it in my car. I also do driver training with people of all ages. So I see folks from brand new drivers that are wanting to know, can I get my permit? Maybe that kiddo has a disability, maybe they have cerebral palsy, they may have just anxiety, they may be on this, autism spectrum. So I see younger drivers, I see experienced drivers that have had maybe an injury or illness such as a stroke or an amputation to help them return to drive. And then older drivers, because a lot of times those folks need to know, am I still safe to drive? Or their family members have concerns about them driving. And as you know, some disease processes can start later in life. So I work with folks with things such as Parkinson's disease, neuropathy, those types of things as well. So today we're going to focus on older drivers and the fitness to drive evaluation. So why are older drivers such a large part of our driving evaluation? So as you guys can see there, this fact is from NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, that older drivers make up 22% of all drivers. It's almost a quarter of the people on the road. And in 2022, people over the age of 65 accounted for 19% of all traffic fatalities. So we always think it's those younger drivers that are really an issue. But what we know is it's at both ends of the spectrum. Those young drivers are really high risk for accidents, and then we have older drivers that are very high risk for accidents, and typically those do end in fatality. So keep in mind that age alone is not going to be a factor for driving. We do know that as we age, we see changes in strength, range of motion, vision, sometimes cognition, especially if there's a disease process. So we're looking at all those things. And all of these things can affect someone's ability to drive. So let's talk about some warning signs that we might see that would indicate an individual needs a driving evaluation. And that some of these you're thinking, oh, these would never happen. These happen all the time. The first one is they don't observe signs or signals or other traffic. And I mean, like, they just stop at the stop signs. They don't really know what to do with a yield sign, or they may stop when there's no traffic coming. So just kind of losing at the beginning, it can be a very minor thing. Toward the end, it can be very major. The need for instruction or support from a passenger. So we call this co-piloting. And if you have to have a co-pilot to drive, then you should not be driving. If I have to have someone to tell me it's safe to make a left turn, or I'm looking over here, you can go now, or for directions, and I don't mean like turn left to the next light, a direction to somewhere that they've been frequently. So co-piloting is a red flag. Slow or poor decision making. A lot of our elders, when they have accidents, that unprotected left turn. So you're at a green light, it's a solid green, not the arrow, and they just don't know when to turn. They either wait too long and then they turn, so they're in a major accident, or they make an impulsive decision and turn quickly in front of another car. Frequently getting lost. So this is always a red flag. When I have a family member or a loved one say to me, my dad's been lost 3 times, 5 times, whatever the number may be, I told them I'm not going to pass them on the driving assessment. We can go ahead and you can take that license right now. I don't want to be the reason that somebody's a silver alert. And we see those frequently. Sometimes they've just gotten lost going down the road and they've come back. I've had people that have been, I have one gentleman that his wife called me in, he had been lost for hours. He had gone less than a mile from his home and couldn't find his way home. So that's a very scary situation for family members and for the client, because when they're in an unfamiliar situation, they start making driving errors. So getting lost is a big red flag. Inappropriate driving speeds. I know you're all thinking, we live in Memphis, everybody has an inappropriate driving speed, especially if you came on the interstate. But you know, not having people drive too slow or too fast. Too slow is just as unsafe as too fast. If I've got a client on the interstate going 50 or 45 and the car's coming back up behind them doing 90, well, sure, that car shouldn't be doing 90, but if it hits my client, dead's dead, right? So we have to make sure that they're safe. So driving too slow is a big red flag. And then sometimes we see folks with like some types of dementia where they lose that impulsivity and they're driving way too quickly, recklessly, things that they didn't do in the past. Poor road position or wide turns. So frequently we'll see this with like lane wandering, some changing lanes without meaning to, or just sometimes kind of swerving in their lane. They look like a driver going back and forth. They're staying in their lines, but they're kind of all over the road. Or making turns that are extremely wide or too tight. So if someone has popped tires because they hit the curb 500 times, that's a red flag. Or, you know, they're turning really wide when they're making that right or left turn. And then, of course, accidents for near misses. If someone has had multiple accidents, red flag. But the other thing we look at is I'll have to walk around their vehicle and see what are all the scrapes and bumps and that type of thing. And I'll have them tell me what happened here. A lot of times they don't know what happened. They don't realize they have damage to their car. So what is the evaluation? When I go to see my clients, I do a clinical evaluation with them first, which I'm going to talk about briefly. And then if they do well on that, we proceed to behind the wheel evaluation. The clinical evaluation, what I do is I go to their homes. We do a medical history. Sometimes doctors will send me that when they send me the order. Sometimes they don't. So I'll typically have them pull out all their medications and I'll go through their medications with them. And that kind of gives me an idea. Did they have high blood pressure? Are they diabetic? Did they take medicines for memory? So that medical history gives me kind of a background. Their driving history is everything from when did you start driving? How old were you? How often do you drive? Do you drive every day? Do you drive once a week? Where do you drive? Do you drive on the interstate? Do you drive at night? Do you just go to the grocery store in the local area, or do you drive 5 states away to see your children? So that's all important information. As well as, have they had any accidents, tickets? Have they been pulled over a lot that maybe never gotten a ticket? We see that a lot, especially in small towns. That mom gets pulled over every day for, you know, weaving in and out, but they know her, so they're not going to give her a ticket. So all of those questions are part of it. The functional ability is how well they move. Can they move their arms, their legs? How strong are they? Do they have good neck range of motion? So they can check their mirrors, good trunk range of motion, so they can really check behind them for a car like a yield sign. So that's kind of the first part. Look at range of motion. Look at their balance, their sitting balance and their standing balance. I always ask if they've had falls. And the reason for that is we know there's a correlation between the number of falls that a person has and their ability, not their ability, but the number of wrecks that they may be involved in. So it's not causative, but it is correlation. I check their vision. So I have a big vision machine I bring in with me. And the state only cares about distant acuity. So in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi, you have to be able to see 20/40 or better, but they don't look at peripheral vision unless you have a CDL. So I check peripheral vision as well. And that changes as we age. That does decrease. So sometimes people will have a peripheral vision loss and they don't even realize that they have that. So I check that. Color perception, can they see, the colors of the signs? There is an interesting fact that I've started noticing, so I did research it, and it is part of it. When people have dementia, they have a really hard time with those color slides. They're called the Ishikara color slides. And so I've started testing all my folks that have a diagnosis of dementia to see if they can make those color slides out. I also show them road signs, so typical road signs that you guys would know, and I have them tell me what they mean, and then I look at depth perception. The cognitive portion can consist of several different things, but basically we're looking at memory, executive function, problem solving, those types of things. And there's some general cognitive tests that I use. Then I also look at attention to task, divided attention, visual scanning, processing speed, and wayfinding. And so those are all pencil and paper tests, and they're not times that I've decided on. They're what's research evidence-based, so research-based. So I time my tests, I tell them they're being timed, and that kind of helps me to decipher if they did okay, did they do well enough to get behind the wheel, or should we not get behind the wheel? And then with all of that together, we decide we're going to get behind the wheel. So if I have someone that has lots of red flags and I know they should not be driving, I don't get them behind the wheel any longer, just for my safety, their safety, and for liability reasons. But if they did do pretty well, or they did well enough, we go to the behind the wheel assessment. I do take them in my car because I have instructor gas and I'm an instructor brake. I used to have gas. I also have the ability to put in adaptive equipment. So if they need specialized equipment to drive with, I can put that in my vehicle and have them drive with that. So I'm looking at just basic general rules of the road. Are they stopping at stop signs? Are they paying attention to pedestrians? Those types of things. I also look at their attention behind the wheel. So what we see sometimes is people do really well for about the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then about 30, 45 minutes in, they start losing it. So they've got good short attention, but they don't have good sustained attention. So that's important as well. Basic driving skills, so they know where everything is in the vehicle. I've had people get in my car before and go, "Where's your gas brake?" Well, it's the same place it is in your car. So obviously that's a red flag. Or where's the turn signal? So some of the things are going to be different, obviously, right? Some people have a key start. My car has a push button start. So we talk through things that might be different, but they should know the basics of the vehicle. We typically drive about an hour. So I go to their homes. I ask them to give me about 3 or 4 places that they go frequently. It's normally the grocery store, to get my hair done, to go to church, hang out with friends, whatever it may be. So they give me those places, drugstore, doctor's offices, and we drive to about 3 or 4 of those places based on how far they are. If I have someone that's making lots of driving errors early on, I don't always have them drive an hour. So if I know we've run 4 stop signs, they've scared me to death, we're going back home. And I will let them run a stop sign sometimes, just so if it's safe. Just so I can say, did you see that stop sign? Well, I always run that stop sign. So lots of different answers from people when they start making those errors. And as I mentioned, it can be with adaptive equipment. So I have something called hand controls, which if somebody can't use their feet any longer, either from an amputation, I see a lot of neuropathy. So when people lose sensation in their feet, those hand controls in and have those teach them how to drive with those as well. If somebody's had a stroke and they can no longer use their right side, I can put in a left foot accelerator where they gas and brake with their left foot, and a spinner knob where they steer with their left hand. So it can also be with that adaptive equipment. So what are some possible outcomes that may happen? Well, they may have driven appropriately during the evaluation. I never say you're safe to drive because not anybody, that legally we don't use those terms, but appropriate during the evaluation on that date during that time. Check all the boxes to make sure I'm covered. Sometimes they may drive with restrictions. The only restriction that I can ask the state to put on their driver's license is for no nighttime driving. There's a couple of states that will let us do a radius. Tennessee is not one of those. So if I recommend that a person only drive within a radius, that's just a recommendation that I give. And frequently the doctors, especially neurologists, will give them these recommendations ahead of time. no nighttime driving, no interstate driving, only drive in familiar areas, those types of things. So like I said, those are only recommendations, they're not true restrictions. Typically, if someone has a progressive diagnosis, if they have Parkinson's disease, if they have dementia, if they have Huntington's, anything that's going to get worse over time, we will have a reassessment in the future. I'll let their doctor help me determine what that time frame may be, because I'm seeing that person for one moment in time. I don't know how they looked 6 months ago. They may have looked great 6 months ago and they had a rapid decline. Maybe they have a really slow progression. So I ask their doctors to help me decide, is it 3 months, it's going to be a year. It's almost always within the year. I refer frequently to other specialists, other therapists, if they need more therapy. If they need vision therapy, I send them to Southern College. Cognitive therapy, whatever the case may be. And then sometimes they're unqualified to drive at this time. So in this case, it's driving cessation. So I have a conversation to them about what that means, why they did not pass the evaluation, whether it's the clinical only or the clinical and behind wheel, what the errors were and why they're unsafe. I typically do have a family member there with me so that they can help kind of support the person, because obviously losing your ability to drive is a huge loss for many people. And I do report that to the state. So if I recommend that someone's no longer able to drive, I send that letter to the state. The state sends it to revoke their license based on that recommendation. And then equipment recommendations, which I briefly mentioned earlier, such as hand controls or left accelerators. So the reason I just kind of wanted to mention this driving cessation concern, first of all, I will say I do not take this lightly. If I tell somebody, or I know that somebody's not going to be safe to drive, I sit down with them and I have a very serious conversation about why that is. I understand and I know that it is a huge loss to be able to not drive. For many people, it's a loss of their independence. They may live alone. They can't get places now. For many people, it's just a lack of transportation. If you live in Memphis, you have access to some public transportation. I live in Hernando. There's no bus, there's no Uber, there's no Lyft. So if you don't have the ability to drive there, you're really depending on private transportation services or on an individual or family member. It's socially isolating for many people, because now I can't go to church, or I can't go to my social events or to see my friends or to see my families. They have to come to me. And so we talk to them about using those resources, families and friends, to help them with their transportation needs. And then it also makes it very difficult for them to access their needs, doctor's appointments, dentists, eye doctors. So we see people that kind of drop off. They're no longer going to all the doctors they needed to go to. They're maybe going to one or two. So those are all concerns. These are just some of the resources that I use. So NHTSA is a National Highway Traffic Safety Association. My association is called AIDED. It's the Association for Driver Rehab Specialists. If you are ever looking for a driver rehab specialist, you can go to aided.net. Click on that. It'll bring up your state. It'll tell you everybody that does driving rehab in that area. NMEDA is the National Mobility Equipment Dealer Association. So they're the people that put in the equipment, like or don't put it in, but they monitor that. They also have some great resources if somebody's having a hard time getting in and out of a car. They have pictures of lift seats, lifts, how you're going to get your wheelchair on the back of your car with either a lift or a scooter type thing. And then my website is drivingindependence.com. Do I have any questions? Okay. I'm going to start here.
From the insurance aspect, if it's a couple and one of them stops driving, inform your insurance company. It may actually result in savings, because there's now one driver, not two elderly, and maybe a better driving history on the remaining driver.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, sir.
I have two questions for you. One, how did you ever want to get into this business? And two, do you find, or have you found with your clients, that they become or tend to become frustrated or angry more than any other driver?
So that depends. I'm going to answer the second one first. That depends on their diagnosis. So a lot of folks that have dementia, depending on the type of dementia they have, will be very frustrated. So we do see lots of road rage, lots of confusion, frustration, whatever it may be. So yes, to that, depending on the client.
So you encourage them not to drive armed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then how did I decide to do this? You know, I just kind of jumped in. I thought, I knew there was a need in our area. Nobody did this except for the VA, and the VA does have a program. So if I have veterans, I'll always send them to the VA because that's covered. And it's been a godsend. It truly is my ministry and my mission.
Wow.
So I think that's fine.
Bill, thanks for what you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, oh, I'm gonna go here.
Well, speaking of insurance, in AARP magazine, I came across a thing that said you can save on your insurance if you take this course, this online course. So I took it and then submitted the thing to my insurance company, and for a couple of years, my insurance lowered for a couple of years. So I looked it up, and for $12.50 to $30, you can take drivesafe.com or Safe2Drive, that's the number 2, and take that course and submit the certificate and lower your insurance.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Drive Safe is a great program. Absolutely recommend it. As you guys know, the laws change, driving rules change. I mean, people, you know, when I learned to drive, you pulled in the middle of the intersection and waited to make your left turn. You don't do that anymore. You will get hit potentially if you're sitting in the middle of the intersection. That's our danger zone. And when I tell some of my elderly drivers that, they're like, well, I didn't know that. So it is important to keep up with what the laws are and the rules are. And it's always great to have a refresher course. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, sir.
Maybe too, though, on that insurance, of course, being an insurance agent, one of the things they try to do with it, the course is not going to just only save you money, but it teaches you some things. I know when I used to get ready to do a turn, I'd already have my wheels ready to go. And they were talking about how that's just somebody hits you and we're in, guess where you're going? Going
It's
right
oncoming
into
traffic,
traffic.
yes.
So there's a lot of really important information. The other question I have, let's say somebody's given the driving test and said, we got to give them the benefit of the doubt, not that you would do that, but a gray area. Is there a follow-up to your driving history that you say, look, we need to take another look maybe in 6 months or next year?
Yes, absolutely. If I have concerns, I know somebody's in that gray area. I mean, I'm very upfront with them. I explained everything to them. These were my concerns. This is why I'm concerned. And I do think you need to have a follow-up. And all of this goes back to their doctor, so it's on a medical record as well. So it's not just me going, well, this is my opinion. When their doctor signs off on it, it's that recommendation. So they really should follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica.
Just for clarification for the room, just wanted to make sure, when they're approaching your services, you need to go to a doctor and have a formal order for your services,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, yes. And sometimes I'll help them with that. I'll fax their order over to the doctor. I want their doctor to be aware that they're having an evaluation and that they're medically cleared to do it, because not everybody tells me the truth all the time. I know that's really hard to believe, but you know, no, I've never had a seizure. Well, they had a seizure 3 months ago that I can't get them behind the wheel. Nobody can get them behind the wheel in that case. So it just gives me that medical clearance as well to see them. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Any other questions?
This has been a very informative class.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Y'all were great. Thank you very much.